"I haven't slept with a man in a year," said the Apache beauty to the rich cowboy, her voice calm as desert wind. He stood in the doorway of his ranch barn, lantern shaking in his hand, unsure if he heard her right. She did not blink, her eyes fixed like stone before a storm, feathers rising with the dry wind. In that moment, their two worlds crashed like iron against thunder, and silence turned heavier than gunsmoke. But why would an Apache woman make such a vow? And why reveal it to the one man she should never trust? A single lantern flame trembled against the barn wall, throwing long shadows across ropes, dust, and stacked feed sacks. Outside, the prairie wind scraped against the wooden planks like a warning whispered by unseen spirits. The rich cowboy stood barefoot on the cold dirt floor, still wearing his work shirt, sweat dried in pale lines down his neck. He had opened the barn door only to check the horses before settling in for the night, nothing more. But the door had not closed behind him. Soft footsteps pressed into the sand, slow and careful. A pair of beaded ankle straps appeared first beneath the moonlight, followed by tall, elegant legs painted with earth symbols, then a leather dress stitched with patience and pride. The Apache beauty did not rush. She walked the way a hawk lands, silent, certain, watching everything. She stopped only when the lantern's glow revealed her fully, the wind pulling a long braid across her shoulder like a living thread. The cowboy swallowed hard. His land was quiet for miles in every direction, yet she stood there as though she had risen straight out of the desert floor. Her gaze moved over the barn, not in fear, but in judgment, studying, measuring, deciding. A distant thunder rumbled, though no storm clouds were in sight. She did not smile. She raised her chin only slightly, enough to show she held no shame and no weakness. "I haven't slept with a man in a year," she said, the words smooth but heavy, as if carved from the rock cliffs of her homeland. The cowboy's grip tightened on the lantern handle. He didn't step forward. He didn't step back. The horses shifted inside their stalls, ears twitching, sensing something he could not name. The wind changed direction, colder now, pushing dust beneath the barn door, as if the earth itself leaned in to hear what would come next. And somewhere beyond the prairie fence, a distant metal sound echoed, faint, slow, deliberate, like someone testing a locked chain in the dark. His voice barely escaped his throat. "Why would you tell me that?" She did not blink. The wind answered first, then her eyes moved past him, toward the shadows behind his back. Something, or someone, was already there. The cowboy kept one hand on the lantern and the other near the stall door, unsure whether to stay still or move. The Apache beauty stood motionless, framed by moonlight like a figure carved from canyon stone. Her braid swayed once, then settled, as if even her hair obeyed a deeper discipline. He cleared his throat but did not speak again. Words felt dangerous. She took 2 slow steps forward, each one measured like a drumbeat in a distant ceremony. The horses inside shifted again, snorting softly, sensing a force they respected more than feared. "I did not come here by mistake," she said, her voice low, steady. "I believe that," he whispered. Her eyes narrowed, not unkindly, but as though she needed proof of his honesty. A man who lies looks away. "You did not—" He looked down for a brief moment, ashamed he had doubted himself. When he raised his eyes again, she was studying the saddle rack, the worn leather straps, the dust that clung to every untouched corner of his life. "You live with plenty," she murmured, "but sleep with emptiness." "That so?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but his voice cracked. She turned back toward him. Not closer, not farther, just aligned. "You speak like a man who once trusted someone," she said, and your trust came back broken." He tightened his jaw. "I didn't say a word about any of that." "You didn't need to." Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It breathed. A dry gust pushed the barn door open wider, striking the wall with a hollow thud. The cowboy reached to close it, but she lifted her hand, just enough to stop him. "No," she said, "leave it as it is. The wind must speak if it wishes." He let go of the handle. The lantern flickered, almost going out, then steadied again. "How far did you walk?" he asked. She glanced at the dirt around her feet. Far enough to leave questions behind. And close enough to bring new ones here. Yes. He tried to read her meaning, but there were no spare clues. Her words were like river stones, simple, heavy, and impossible to break. The horses quieted again. One nudged its stall door, and the cowboy instinctively stepped toward it, worried it might kick. She watched him, noting his reflexes. "You care for animals first," she observed. "You have to. They can't care for themselves." She nodded once. A man who protects creatures smaller than him can be trusted more than others. She moved closer to the nearest stall, placing a gentle hand on the wood. The horse inside leaned forward, breathing against her palm. She closed her eyes, whispering something in Apache, words soft as river silt, yet carrying a tone older than metal or fences. When she opened her eyes again, she spoke plainly. "In my people, we honor those who guard life before guarding pride. That is why I kept my vow." He swallowed. "The vow you spoke about outside, that year-long vow." "Yes." He hesitated before asking, not sure if the question was allowed. "What made you choose that path?" She looked past him for several seconds, watching the lantern flame dance. "There was a promise made," she said finally. "To someone." "No, to something." Before he could respond, she shifted her stance slightly, her hand moving from the stall to her own chest. Fingers splayed as though checking whether her heart still obeyed. The flame cast shadows across the painted symbols on her legs, symbols that now seemed less decorative and more protective, like maps or warnings. "Are you in danger?" he asked quietly. Instead of answering, she turned the question around. "Would it matter if I were?" He thought carefully before replying. "No person walks alone under this sky if I see them first. That's how I was raised." Her eyes softened, though only a fraction. "People speak of honor," she said, "but honor must be seen, not heard." He stepped aside and motioned toward a water bucket near the horses. "If you walked far, you should drink." A long pause. This was the act of care. She approached slowly, knelt, and lifted a ladle of water with silent dignity. She drank only half, then poured the rest into the dirt, intentionally. "Share with the earth," she said. "So it shares back." Before he could ask what she meant, she froze. Her head turned sharply toward the open barn door, eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting movement far beyond human sight. The cowboy strained to hear. At first, nothing. Then, a slow, metallic clank echoed across the darkness, followed by the faint creak of a wagon wheel that should not be moving at this hour. She whispered 4 words that chilled him more than any winter wind. "They found me here." The cowboy set the lantern down on a hay bale, the flame wobbling as if nervous of what approached. The Apache beauty did not move. She stood with her back straight, hands loose at her sides, eyes fixed on the dark beyond the barn's open doorway. "What do you mean?" "They," he whispered. She didn't look at him. "Men who follow rules written on paper but break the laws of the earth." "Lawmen?" he asked. "Lawmen hired by men richer than you," she replied. "They call themselves protectors. They protect only gold." The metallic sound rang again. Clank, clank, slow, steady, deliberate, like someone dragging a chain across packed dirt. The cowboy felt his chest tighten. "If they're searching for you, there must be a reason." "There is," she said. "But reasons grow thorns when told too soon." He stepped closer to the door, peering out into the moonlit yard. The wind pushed a tumbleweed across the ground, rolling it straight toward the fence before the wind shifted again, sending it right back. "Why would they follow an Apache woman this far from her land?" he asked. Her voice dropped lower. "Because something was taken. And because I refuse to lie for those who took it." He turned to her, surprised by the sharpness in her tone. "You stood against them." She finally met his eyes. "Would you not, if someone placed their boot on your family's windpipe?" He felt the weight of her words, as solid as the barn beams above them. "Tell me what I can do," he said. "You can listen with both ears, and speak with none." He nodded slowly. Outside, the metallic echo grew louder, closer. The horses stamped nervously, snorting and shifting in their stalls. She moved toward him. Do not light the barn brighter. They search for light first. He lowered the lantern wick until the flame shrank to a small ember of orange. Shadows stretched longer, swallowing half the barn. Do they mean you harm? He asked. Not with their hands, she replied. Their weapons are papers with seals, stamps, and signatures. To them, those are sharper than knives. That doesn't sound like men who come out here at night, he said quietly. They come because they fear shame more than darkness. He swallowed. What did you refuse to lie about? She inhaled slowly. A treaty. Words written in ink that twist the truth. They want me to say the land is not ours, that my people never hunted there, that our ancestors never slept beneath those cliffs. They want the world to believe a lie. And you wouldn't. No, my voice is the only thing they couldn't buy. The cowboy clenched his fists. So they're hunting you for refusing to sign a lie. For refusing to kneel before men who think they own the sun, she said. He took a step closer to her, compelled by something he didn't yet understand. You're safe here. No one is safe when paper becomes a weapon, she answered. The chain noise stopped, all at once. The sudden silence was worse. The cowboy held his breath. She raised her hand, signaling him to stay still. Her posture changed, less like a visitor, more like a guardian. Her eyes tracked something he couldn't see, her head turning slightly as if following a distant heartbeat. A faint crunch of footsteps drifted across the yard, then another, then two more. They came on foot, she whispered. They don't want the wheels heard. He leaned closer. How many? 3, she said without hesitation. One moves like he carries weight he didn't earn. One breathes through his teeth. One drags his left heel. The cowboy stared at her. How can you hear that? She didn't answer. She simply stepped forward, stopping just inside the edge of the lantern light. You should hide, he said. You should not tell an eagle where to fly. He opened his mouth, but before he could argue, a sharp silhouette appeared on the barn wall, a shadow cast by the moon, long and tall, belonging to a man standing just outside the doorway. The cowboy froze. The Apache beauty didn't. Stay behind me, she whispered. A firm knock rattled the barn door. Not a polite tap, a claiming knock, a knock of ownership. Evening, a voice drawled from outside. We're looking for someone. Might have passed through here. Apache woman, travels alone. The cowboy's throat went dry, her breath didn't change at all. She is here, she whispered, and she is not afraid. The man outside spoke again, firmer this time. We ain't leaving until we search this place. The cowboy's heart pounded. The lantern flickered violently. Dust drifted from the rafters. She turned her head slightly, just enough for the cowboy to see her eyes. Whatever happens, she said softly, do not answer before I do. The shadow outside shifted. A second shadow appeared beside it. Then a third. The door creaked as someone tried the latch, and in the dim, quivering lantern glow, the cowboy saw something he had never seen in her until now. A single bead of sweat trailing down her temple, not fear, preparation, because whatever waited outside was not coming for a conversation. The cowboy froze, holding his breath as the storm outside mixed with the low voice behind the door. The injured Apache woman steadied herself on the bed, one hand slipping under the fur as if she still held authority even while wounded. Her eyes sharpened, not with panic, but calculation. Stay silent, she whispered. You want me caught, he muttered. Not by wolves, she replied. Another knock, harder this time, shook the door on its hinges. I heard voices. Open it, the man outside demanded. The cowboy moved toward the wall and blew out the main lamp, leaving only small ember light from the fire. Shadows stretched long like hungry fingers. Rain hammered the roof harder, as if trying to drown out decisions. Hide, she ordered quietly. You're hurt, he replied. Hide, she repeated. He slipped behind a tall wood cabinet near the corner, far from the fire. His heartbeat sounded louder than the storm. The woman straightened her back as much as she could, gripping the blanket with iron determination. The door slammed again. Last chance, I know someone's inside. Her voice came out steady, despite pain. Storm shelter. Private. The man outside paused. You alone? She hesitated half a second, long enough for Danger to smell weakness. "Yes," she said. The cowboy clenched his jaw behind the cabinet. The stranger's voice dropped lower. "Then you won't mind if I check?" The latch began to shift. The cowboy's hand reached for the old iron poker hanging by the hearth. His fingers curled around it, holding it like a silent promise. The door creaked open, slow and heavy. A tall figure stepped inside, long coat soaked, hat dripping rainwater onto the dusty floor. He closed the door behind him without breaking eye contact with the woman. "Bad night to be alone," he said. "Better than wrong company," she replied. He smirked. "You seen a drifter pass through, tall, quiet, rough clothes?" She stared coldly. "Many drifters exist." He took 2 slow steps forward, studying her wound. "Strange place for a lady during a storm?" She kept her expression stone still. "Storm don't ask permission." He chuckled. "Fair, but I'd like answers." She pretended to adjust her blanket, hiding her leg deeper. "Not your business." The stranger leaned closer, voice dropping into threat. "Everything here is my business." The cowboy gripped the poker tighter, ready to spring. The stranger's eyes moved slowly around the room. He noticed 2 cups near the fire. "You said alone," he said. She closed her eyes slow, like preparing for a blade. "1 cup old," she answered. The stranger touched the cups with his glove. The heat rose like confession. He turned his head toward the dark corner. "Funny, still warm." The cowboy prepared to strike, breath shallow, muscles locked, ready to act if the man reached for a weapon. The stranger stepped closer to the cabinet. "Come out," he ordered. "No trouble if fast." The woman spoke sharply. "He saved my life." The stranger stopped, turning to her. "That's so." She nodded, eyes fierce. "Bullet wound, he pulled it." The stranger stared, unsure if it was truth. "Then where's the bullet?" She pointed slightly toward the cup where the cowboy had dropped it. The stranger picked it up, studying the bloody metal inside. "Not many know how to cut clean," he murmured. His tone shifted, softer, thoughtful, like he'd seen men die from less. "If he saved you, he ain't simple drifter," he said. The woman stared harder, voice steady as judgment. "He's no killer." The stranger turned toward the cabinet, but didn't lift his gun. "If he's harmless, he can step out." The cowboy breathed slow, then stepped forward, poker lowered but still in hand. "I didn't start no fire," he said. The stranger looked him over. "Didn't ask about fire." All 3 eyes locked, fear, law, and unknown motive, suspended like lightning before strike. The stranger's expression changed, unreadable. He reached into his coat slowly. The cowboy raised the poker in defense. The woman tensed, hand sliding toward her badge. Lightning struck outside, bright, violent, illuminating the object the stranger pulled from his coat. A folded wanted notice, edges soaked, ink smeared, with a face that matched the cowboy's eyes. The whistle hung in the air like a blade that refused to fall. It wasn't loud, but it carried distance. A sound shaped by someone who didn't need to shout to be heard. The men outside went still. Boots rooted, breath caught, fingers tightening on whatever steel they carried. The Apache woman lifted her chin the smallest degree, her eyes narrowing toward the far edge of the prairie. "That sound is not for them," she whispered. The cowboy asked, "Then it's for you?" "Yes," she said, "but it should not be here." Outside, one man called into the darkness, "Who's out there?" "Show yourself." No answer came, only another gust of dry wind rattling the hanging iron tools on the barn wall. The cowboy leaned closer. "You know that whistle?" she answered quietly. "It comes from someone who walks between camps and towns." "Friend?" "Not always." "Enemy?" "Not always." The man outside slammed the door with his fist. "Enough games!" "If she's in there, we're taking her in. Treaty office orders." She turned her head slightly, eyes cold as flint. "That treaty does not belong to them," she said, "or to the ink they worship." The cowboy spoke in a low tone. "If they break in, I stand with you." She looked at him a long moment. "You stand with truth, not with me." The whistle sounded a second time, shorter, sharper, not a warning, but a summons. She whispered, more to herself than him, He should not follow me here. I told him not to. The cowboy whispered, "Who is he?" "A runner," she replied. "One who carries messages no horse can outrun." The men outside muttered among themselves. One said, "Could be scouts." Another whispered, "Could be her people." The third cursed under his breath, fear slipping past his anger. The cowboy whispered, "What does the whistle mean?" "It means something changed," she murmured, "something faster than our plans." Another heavy thud struck the doorframe, not an attempt to break in this time, but a demand. "We want answers right now." The Apache woman stepped forward, hands at her sides, voice steady. "You do not seek answers. You seek permission to pretend you are right." The leader outside spat back, "That land ain't yours." "It is not land," she replied. "It is memory." Silence followed, the kind that shifts the ground itself. The cowboy whispered, "How far will they go?" "As far as their pride decides," she said. "Pride is the deepest hole a man can fall into." She turned to him again. "Do not fear them." He nodded, though fear breathed against his spine. The door latch trembled again, not pulled but touched, like someone testing the wood for weakness. Bootsteps shifted. There was a scrape of metal. The cowboy whispered, "They're getting ready." "Yes," she said, "but not for what they believe." Before he could ask, the whistle struck a third time, different rhythm, 2 short, 1 long. The Apache woman's eyes widened slightly, the only sign of surprise she had shown since arriving. "That signal," she whispered. "He never uses that signal unless—" She did not finish. The prairie answered for her. A distant horse whinnied, not from the barn, but from beyond the hill. Another followed, then another. The men outside turned sharply toward the sound. One shouted, "Is someone out there?" No reply, only hoofbeats, faint, controlled, not rushed. The cowboy gripped a support beam. "Someone else is coming." She nodded. "Not many. 2 riders, maybe 3. Yours?" "No," she said softly. "Not anymore." The hoofbeats grew louder, slow, deliberate, not charging, not sneaking, a pace chosen by someone who wanted to be heard but not seen yet. The man outside barked, voice cracking. "Stay where you are. Nobody move." The Apache woman moved closer to the door, and the cowboy stepped with her without being told. She spoke through the wood, calm as an oath. "You think you are hunters, but you have walked into a circle you cannot see." The leader snarled. "We enforce the law." She answered, "The law does not hear the wind. The wind remembers everything." The hoofbeats stopped. Exactly. As if the riders had reached an invisible threshold, not one step more. Then a voice, unfamiliar to the cowboy, called from the darkness, deep and controlled. "She does not belong to you. Walk away." The men outside froze. Every breath in the yard stopped. The Apache woman closed her eyes once, then opened them with silent resolve. The cowboy whispered, "Who is that?" She whispered back, "The one who taught me never to bow." A shadow dismounted outside, tall, still as a pine at midnight. The men shifted in panic, metal scraped, boots slid, orders tangled. And the barn door latch began to turn. The latch turned slowly, not forced, as if whoever touched it believed patience was stronger than steel. Dust drifted down from the rafters like quiet snowfall. The cowboy felt every muscle in his back tighten, yet he held the stance she'd told him to hold, firm, silent, eyes on her. She didn't blink. Her breathing never changed. Outside, the 3 men hesitated. They weren't sure whether to turn toward the shadowed rider or keep their eyes on the barn. A man with fear in his chest never knows which danger is real. The rider's voice echoed again, deeper this time. "You heard me. Walk away." The leader outside spat back, "We're here on orders." "Orders don't protect you," the voice answered. One of the men whispered, "He ain't bluffing." The leader snapped, "Quiet." The cowboy whispered, "Do you know him well?" She replied, "Enough to trust his silence more than others' promises." The latch turned a final click, but the door didn't open. It simply waited, like it was choosing sides. A breeze suddenly shifted direction, blowing inward instead of out, stirring the horses and carrying a faint scent of iron, dust, and something older than fences. The cowboy whispered, "Why is he here?" She answered, "Because the truth didn't stay buried." Outside, a boot scuffed the dirt, then another. The leader called to the rider, "State your business." The rider replied, "I don't owe you words. You interfering with official government search." "I interfere with lies," the rider said. The cowboy whispered, "They're trapped between him and the barn." "People trapped by choices become unpredictable," she murmured. A tense pause curled through the night, almost physical. Then, unexpectedly, a new voice joined, softer, younger, but from near the rider. "She isn't running. She's choosing where to stand." The cowboy tensed. "There's another person with him." "Yes," she said quietly. "Someone who once doubted me." Outside, one of the three men hissed, "We should leave before this gets worse." The leader snapped, "Nobody leaves. She signs that paper, or she's dragged in." The cowboy whispered, "Dragged?" She looked down briefly, then back up. "Some men call it justice when it is only fear in uniform." The wind pushed harder against the open crack of the door, whistling like the land itself was warning them that choices now had weight. The cowboy finally spoke, voice low but steady, "You won't be dragged anywhere." She studied him. For the first time, emotion flickered across her face, not fear or hope, but recognition. Outside, the leader barked, "Open this door, or we will!" The cowboy stepped forward instinctively, but she raised her palm, stopping him. "No," she whispered. "Let them reveal what they are." The rider outside spoke again, calm as stone. "You're standing on land that doesn't want your boots." The leader laughed once, a short, harsh sound. "Land don't talk." The Apache woman answered through the wood, "It speaks. You're just not welcome long enough to hear it." The wind grew stronger, rattling loose hay and shuddering the lantern's glow. Something in the air shifted, the kind of shift animals sense before humans do. One of the men outside suddenly called out, nervous, "We need to go now. Something ain't right." "Stand still," the leader ordered. "No," the rider said. "You stand still." A heavy silence followed, the kind that forces truth. The cowboy felt a strange pull inside his chest, the feeling that the barn was no longer hiding them, but witnessing them. He whispered, "If they push that door, what happens?" She answered, "Then the story changes." "How?" "That depends on who speaks first." The bottom hinge groaned again under shifting pressure. The leader outside gripped the handle. He growled, "She signs or she bleeds." The cowboy's eyes widened. The Apache woman did not flinch. She whispered 3 slow words meant only for him. "Do not break." Then, the rider stepped into visible moonlight, revealing something none of them expected. Moonlight slid across the yard like a thin blade of silver, carving out the silhouette of the rider. He stepped forward, slow and unhurried, a long coat brushing the grass behind him. His face remained shadowed beneath the brim of his hat, but his presence felt heavy, like a door to another life had opened. The cowboy watched through the small gap by the hinges, chest tightening. The leader outside barked, "State your name and business." The rider didn't answer. He simply reached into his coat, not fast, not threatening, but deliberate, a gesture that made all 3 men lift their weapons higher. The rider held up paper, not a gun. A folded document, sealed with dark wax. The younger voice near him spoke quietly. "He carries proof." The leader snarled, "Paper don't scare us." The Apache woman spoke through the wood, voice steady. "Paper is what you fear most, because paper tells the truth you bury." The rider stepped closer, boots silent on the grass. "This was taken from your office," he said. "Impossible," the leader snapped. "Your stamp is on it," the rider replied. One of the other men whispered, "Show it to us." "No," the leader growled. "That could be bait." The cowboy whispered, "Is that the treaty?" The Apache woman didn't blink. "Or the part they hid." The rider lowered the paper slightly. "Walk away," he said, "while you still have the choice." The leader cursed, shaking with anger he could not aim. "She signs with us," he shouted, "not with you outlaws." The Apache woman lifted her eyes, voice calm as river stone. "I sign nothing that erases breath." The leader stepped toward the door, hand tightening on the handle. "Last warning," he growled. The cowboy stepped forward beside her. "No weapon, only resolve." "You don't need to do this," he said. She looked at him. "You're choosing a hard path," she whispered. His voice held. "Some paths deserve feet, not fear." Her expression shifted again. That same quiet recognition. Outside, the youngest officer's voice cracked. "Sir, I don't think she's lying." The leader spun on him. "You want to lose your badge over desert ghosts?" "It's not ghosts," the young one muttered. "It's truth." The wind howled once, like it agreed. The rider spoke again. "We don't want your fight, only your footsteps leaving." The leader laughed angrily. "You think some saddle stranger and a runaway can decide law?" The Apache woman answered softly through the wood. "Law without honor is only a threat with ink." A long silence followed, not empty, but deciding. The youngest officer lowered his weapon first. "I didn't ride out to drag people for lies," he said. The second officer hesitated, then lowered his as well. "I don't want no part in this." The leader trembled with rage, eyes wild. "You fools! Do you know what we lose if we walk away?" The rider answered. "You lose what wasn't yours." The leader's voice dropped into a cold whisper. "She ruined everything." "She protected everything," the Apache woman replied. The leader slammed the door with his palm, not breaking it, only marking it. "This ain't over," he hissed. "You can't hide her forever," she whispered. "I'm not hiding." The leader shouted to the other two, "Mount up." "We ride back for warrants." They backed away, boots crunching gravel, weapons half lowered but minds shaken. Hoofbeats followed, each one heavy with unfinished intent. The cowboy let out a slow breath he didn't know he'd held. The rider didn't relax. He remained where he stood, watching the road until the sound faded into the night. Only then did he speak. "She needs to leave here," he said, "before they return." The cowboy stepped toward the open doorway. "She's safe here." "No," the rider replied. "Safety moves. Walls don't." The Apache woman finally stepped into the threshold, where lantern glow and moonlight touched the same floorboard. Her voice carried weight neither man argued with. "I choose my ground," she said. The rider turned his head slightly. "Then choose before the sun rises." The younger voice behind him spoke again, softer now. "We didn't know they'd chase you this far." She met the voice with solemn eyes. "They chase what they fear, not what they understand." The cowboy looked between them, lost in the path ahead, not the moment behind. "What happens if she stays?" he asked. The rider folded the sealed paper back into his coat. Then he said 6 words that changed the air itself. "If she stays, the land changes." The cowboy whispered, "Changes how?" The rider stepped closer, and the wind went still. "That depends," he said, "on who tells the story next." The barn door creaked wider as the wind eased, carrying the last echo of hoofbeats toward the dark hills. The cowboy looked at the Apache woman, waiting for her breath to guide the next step. She did not rush. Her stillness was not hesitation. It was judgment. The rider stayed just outside the doorway, coat brushing against the dust, posture straight as fence posts hammered deep. His hat shadowed his face, but his tone held no shadow at all. "You can't stay in this valley," he said. The cowboy answered, "She chooses." The rider replied, "Choosing and surviving are different paths." The Apache woman stepped 1 pace forward, half in the moonlight, half in the barn glow. "I do not flee," she said. The rider lifted the wax-sealed document. "You don't flee," he replied, "but paper travels faster than footsteps." The cowboy crossed his arms. "Then we stand and face it." The rider turned his head slightly toward him. "Are you prepared to face what paper becomes?" The cowboy hesitated. "Meaning?" "Paper grows teeth," the rider said. "When powerful men hold the pen." A long silence settled, a silence so deep the horses stopped moving, listening. The younger voice near the rider spoke, quieter now. "You didn't tell me it reached this far." She turned her gaze toward the voice. "You didn't ask," she said. The cowboy stepped beside her. "What's actually written?" The rider answered, "Not truth, but a neat version." "What's missing?" the cowboy asked. "History," the rider said. "And witnesses." The Apache woman closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with resolve. "They want land without stories," she said. The cowboy asked, "Why you?" She replied, "Because I refused silence." The rider's coat shifted slightly with the wind. "They will return with stamped orders," he said. The cowboy frowned. "Orders for what?" "To remove obstacles," the rider answered. "Obstacles," the cowboy repeated. The rider nodded once. "Voices," he clarified. A cold gust swept across the yard, rattling the loose tin on the barn roof. Hay swirled near their boots like restless memory. The rider spoke again. "You need to move before dawn," the cowboy asked. "Move where?" "Somewhere with witnesses," the rider replied. "And who decides that?" the cowboy asked. "People who saw truth," the rider said. The Apache woman spoke, voice steady. "No witness stands free." "All carry cost," the younger voice answered. "Some costs are chosen." Her eyes softened. "And some are forced," she said. The cowboy stepped closer to the rider. "You said the land changes. Explain." The rider finally turned enough for moonlight to reveal part of his jaw, lined, weathered, unshaken. "When truth is chased, land holds scars," he said, "and scars shape every future step." The cowboy swallowed, unsure. "I won't abandon her." The rider studied him. "This choice marks you," he said. The cowboy replied, "Then mark me." The Apache woman's eyes shifted between them, weighing, measuring, storing every syllable. She finally spoke, "I will not hide, but I will not stand alone when lies stamp the soil." The rider nodded once. "There is a place," he said. "Where?" the cowboy asked. "North Ridge," the rider replied. The younger voice added, "Deep stand of pines." The rider continued, "Old crossing." "No patrols?" the cowboy asked. "And safe?" The rider answered, "Not safe, but witnessed." The Apache woman looked toward the horizon, the pale line where night met the hint of coming dawn. She whispered, "I know that place." The cowboy asked, "Will you go?" She replied, "Choice must walk before fear." The wind shifted again, sharper this time, colder, like it had heard something approaching far away. The rider turned his head toward the dark ridge. "They will return with paper and men," he said. The cowboy clenched his jaw. "When?" "Soon," the rider replied. "Before sunrise?" "No," the rider said. "Before question becomes rumor." The Apache woman stepped fully outside now, leaving the barn's light behind. "I walk," she said. The cowboy moved toward her. "Then I lead." She shook her head once. "No, you follow. Leaders see danger last." The rider adjusted his coat. "3 riders ahead," he said. "No lights? No noise?" The cowboy nodded. "Then we leave now." But before any of them could take a step, the younger voice spoke with sudden urgency. "Wait, someone's already at the ridge." All 3 turned sharply. "What did you see?" the rider asked. "A spark," the young voice said. "Fire." "No," he replied. "Metal." The Apache woman narrowed her eyes. "Metal," she repeated softly, "means papers arrived first." The barn seemed to lean toward the ridge, as if the beams themselves were listening. The cowboy's stomach tightened at the word metal. Metal meant badges. Metal meant seals. Metal meant law that did not always care about truth. "How far?" the rider asked the younger voice. "Close," he answered. "Just past the bend." "I saw it flash." The Apache woman looked toward the dark line of trees, where the ridge cut the sky in a black curve. "They did not waste time," she said. The cowboy asked, "You expected this?" "I expected greed to move fast," she replied. The rider stepped nearer to the doorway. "If papers reached the ridge, they brought a clerk," he said. "A clerk," the cowboy muttered. "Men who never touch soil," the rider added. "Only ink." The Apache woman's jaw tightened. "Ink can steal more than gun," she said. The cowboy crossed his arms. "What exactly is written?" he asked. The rider looked at him. "A survey report," he said. "False, but stamped." The younger voice clarified. "They marked this land as barren." The cowboy frowned. "Barren?" "Yes," the rider said. "So rich men can claim it cheap." The cowboy glanced around at his barn, his fields, the horses breathing behind him. "This land isn't barren," he said. "That's the point," the rider replied. The Apache woman spoke softly. "They want this valley, the ridge, the waterlines, all of it." The cowboy's hand rested against the doorframe, knuckles pale. "And you refused to say it was empty," he said. She nodded once. "They asked for my words. To lie. I refused." The rider lifted the sealed document slightly. "This copy proves the first report is false," he said. The younger voice added, "and shows whose signatures backed the lie." The cowboy's mind raced. "Whose?" The rider's answer was firm. "Big ranch councils, a judge, a merchant, 2 banks." The wind rattled the tin again, louder this time. The Apache woman turned to the cowboy. "They need silence," she said, "not distance." "You mean they don't care where you go," he said. "They care what I say," she replied. The rider cut in. "If they reach the ridge, they file and seal it," he said. "Then this valley becomes unused land." "And your ranch?" the younger man added. "Just a mistake to erase." The cowboy felt something hot rise in his chest. "So they aren't chasing you alone," he said. "No," she answered. "They're chasing every footstep that depends on this soil." The barn fell quiet. Only a horse snorted softly, stamping once. The rider spoke again, low and direct. "We move before they finish," he said. "Move where?" the cowboy asked. "To the ridge," the rider replied. The younger voice added, "Before daylight signs for them." The Apache woman looked at the cowboy. "This is your ground," she said. "You decide if you stand in its defense." He met her gaze. "If I stay, they erase my land." "If you stay quiet," she corrected. "Silence signs faster than ink." He took a deep breath. "Then we don't stay quiet." The rider nodded once. "You come as owner," he said. The cowboy replied, "I am." "You come as witness," the rider added. The Apache woman said, "And I come as the voice they tried to buy." The younger man shifted his weight nervously. "If they see us together," he said, "they'll know we joined sides." "They already think we did," the Apache woman answered. "Now we make it true." The cowboy turned back toward the barn interior. He moved to the stalls, running a hand over one horse's neck. "They'll need you here," he whispered to the animal. "We need speed, not numbers," the rider said behind him. 3 horses, the younger man added. "Light and quick." The cowboy saddled his best mare, hands working faster now, purpose pushing fear aside. He saddled another for the Apache woman. She watched him tighten the cinch. "You trust these legs?" she asked. He answered, "They've never failed me yet." She touched the horse's neck gently. "Then tonight, they carry more than one story." The rider had his own mount already. The younger man stood ready beside a lean, restless gelding. The cowboy blew out the lantern flame, leaving only moonlight and starlight to guide them. The barn fell into blue shadow. He led the mare outside. The night felt bigger now, the sky heavier. The rider spoke once more. "When we reach the ridge, let her talk first." The cowboy nodded. "She knows the truth," he said. "And they know her face," the younger man added. The Apache woman placed one foot in the stirrup and mounted with quiet grace. "I have not run all year," she said. "Tonight I ride," she added, "not away, but toward the lie." They turned their horses toward the north ridge. The wind shifted behind them, pressing them forward as if the land itself wanted movement. The cowboy glanced back once at his barn, his fields, his quiet home. "Will it still be here?" he asked. The Apache woman replied without turning. "That depends on what you say when we get there." Hoofbeats struck the earth in unison, 4 riders cutting a path through dust and shadow. Up ahead, the ridge stood like a dark wall against the stars. And somewhere beyond those trees, under a thin line of flickering metal light, men were already unfolding the papers that could erase everything they knew. The 4 riders moved like shadows across the valley floor, hooves thudding into dry soil that seemed to breathe under them. The moon dipped behind a bank of thin clouds, leaving only faint silver edges on the hills. The closer they rode toward the ridge, the more the night thickened, like the dark itself understood what waited ahead. The cowboy scanned the horizon. "I still don't see the spark," he whispered. The rider answered without looking back. "Trust the eyes that saw it first." The younger man pointed. "There, past the split pine." A faint glint flickered again through the branches. Cold, sharp, unmistakable. The Apache woman slowed her mare, raising her hand for silence. They halted in a staggered line, all facing the ridge. "No lantern flame," she whispered. The cowboy nodded. "They're hiding." "No," the rider replied. "They're working." A distant scraping sound carried on the wind. Metal against wood, metal against stone, metal against metal. The cowboy murmured, "That's a lockbox." The rider agreed. "They brought seals." The Apache woman dismounted quietly, boots sinking into soft ground. "I go first," she said. "No," the cowboy whispered. "We go together." She shook her head once. "They expect fear. We answer with presence." The rider dismounted next, tying his reins loosely. "We stay in sight, not in reach," he warned. The younger man hesitated, glancing at the shadows. "What if they have rifles ready?" The rider answered. "Then they fear truth more than bullets." The Apache woman stepped forward, pushing through knee-high brush. The men followed 3 paces behind, forming a silent triangle. As they reached the crest, the scene below revealed itself. A small table had been set up beside a wagon. A single lantern burned low, shielded. A man sat hunched over papers, pressing a heavy iron seal into warm wax. A uniformed courier stood beside him, holding a ledger. A third man, not uniformed, watched with folded arms and a proud smirk. The non-uniformed man spoke first. "It will be filed before dawn," the courier asked, "and witnesses?" The man replied, "Witnesses don't matter when records are stamped." The Apache woman stepped into the open. "Then stamp nothing," she said. All 3 men jerked their heads toward her, startled. The courier grabbed the ledger tighter. The man with folded arms narrowed his eyes. The clerk froze mid-stamp. The cowboy stepped into the open beside her. "She won't stand alone," he said. The rider and younger man emerged behind them, silent but present, like lawless silhouettes of a truth older than badges. The chief man sneered. "You again?" The Apache woman's tone never rose. "The land is not barren," she said. The clerk swallowed. "Ma'am, I was given orders." She cut him off softly. "Orders do not erase ground." The courier stepped forward. "This filing is for county expansion." The cowboy spoke firmly. "No." "It's theft written neat," the chief man replied coldly. "Ownership belongs to those who can prove it," the rider answered, "and lies belong to those afraid of honesty." The chief man's eyes slid to the sealed paper, still hidden in the rider's coat. "That document isn't recognized," he said. "It is now," the rider replied. The clerk, sweating, looked between them. "What document?" The rider removed the folded paper slowly and placed it on the table, not toward the clerk, but toward the lantern where light could judge it. The chief man stepped forward threateningly. "That's stolen property." The Apache woman shook her head. "That is returned truth." The courier looked at the seal markings. "These signatures, these aren't legal." The chief man snapped. "They are when nobody challenges them." The cowboy stepped closer. "We challenge." The clerk's voice trembled. "You're accusing a council, a bank, a judge." The rider answered, "No, we're revealing." The courier looked at the Apache woman. "You refuse to sign the first report?" She nodded. "I speak only what soil proves." The chief man hissed, "You think 4 riders can stop a county?" The Apache woman took a single, deliberate breath. "Not 4 riders," she said. 4 witnesses." The chief man leaned forward. "And what if you never reach the courthouse?" A long, dangerous silence fell. The cowboy's hand twitched, not toward a weapon, but toward her. Instinct, not combat. The rider stepped forward, placing one boot subtly in front of the younger man. "Nobody here hides fear," he said. "Only motive." The courier finally exhaled. "I need truth before I sign anything." The chief man turned on him sharply. "You sign or you disappear." The courier's voice faltered. So there were no soil tests listed, no crop reports, and no cattle counts. The clerk stared at the false survey in horror. This could cost careers. The chief man laughed darkly. It was never about careers. The Apache woman stepped closer to the lantern, eyes locked with his. "Then what is it about?" she asked. The chief man leaned in, smile thin and cruel. It's about who controls the map. The lantern flickered, and somewhere in the branches above them, another pair of footsteps shifted. Not one of theirs. Not leaving. Watching. The sound in the branches was slight, a shift of weight, bark against cloth, breath held too long. Every head turned, but no one moved. Even the lantern flame paused, drawn upward like it sensed the unseen witness. The cowboy whispered, "Who's there?" No answer came, only a soft thud of dried needles falling. The chief man smirked. "You gathered your own spies," the rider replied. "We brought truth, not shadows." The courier angled the lantern toward the trees. "I saw something move," he murmured. The clerk swallowed hard, clutching his papers. "Could be one of theirs," he whispered. The Apache woman answered calmly, "Secrets follow those who create them." The chief man scoffed. "You think shadows help your cause?" "No," she said. "Shadows reveal who fears light." Another sound drifted from above, not leaves this time. Metal touching leather. The cowboy felt his heart slam in his chest. "There's armed company." The rider lifted his chin toward the treetops. "Come down," he called. "We speak where eyes can see." For several breaths, nothing moved. Then a voice, quiet, male, strained, "Put the lantern higher." The courier hesitated. The Apache woman nodded once. He raised the lantern slowly. A figure emerged from the pine branches, climbing down the trunk, cautious, stiff, boots scraping bark. He landed unevenly, his knee buckling slightly, but he steadied himself. A young man, not uniformed. Clothes dust-worn, sleeves torn, eyes wide with long-held fear. The clerk gasped. The courier blinked. The cowboy whispered, "Who is he?" The young man stepped into half-light. His voice shook. I saw the first survey meeting." The chief man's face drained of color. "Boy, you keep your mouth shut." The rider stepped between them. "He speaks under open sky," he said. The young man clutched a small-bound notebook to his chest. "I copied what they erased," he said. The Apache woman's gaze sharpened. "You wrote the original figures?" He nodded. "And the water tables," he added. The cowboy exhaled slowly. "That land isn't barren. It feeds 2 valleys." "Yes," the young man said, "and they knew it." The chief man rounded on him, furious. "You were dismissed. You have no authority." The young man stood straighter. "But I have the numbers." The rider gestured toward the table. "Let him speak his part." The clerk, hands trembling, opened his ledger slowly. "What did you measure?" he asked. The young man flipped his notebook pages with shaking fingers. Ground moisture, soil depth, crop yield estimates, river gradient. The courier frowned. "Those tests require approval." The young man nodded. They were approved, until results displeased them. The chief man slammed a fist against the table. "That notebook is meaningless," the Apache woman answered. "Meaning grows from truth, not titles." The cowboy stepped forward. "You told them it could support farms." "Yes," the young man said, "and families." The courier looked at the chief man. "You claimed barren land." The chief man replied, "Because barren land is cheaper." The clerk whispered, "Cheaper? For who?" The chief man grinned darkly. "For progress." Thunder groaned far away, a low distant roll not from storm, but from the mountain belly itself, like something old had heard enough. Wind shifted again, harder now, pushing cold air across their faces. The Apache woman spoke carefully, like placing stones. "This valley breathes life. You wrote death." The chief man snarled, "Life belongs to those who can afford it." Silence cut the clearing open. The rider finally said, 3 documents stand here, false survey, hidden truth, and stolen copy." The clerk stared at the table. "I can't sign tonight," he whispered. The chief man snapped, "You sign now." The courier shook his head. "Not with witnesses." "Then there will be no witnesses," the chief man hissed. He reached inside his coat. The cowboy tensed. The rider shifted his stance. The younger man stepped back. The clerk froze. The courier gasped. But the Apache woman did not move. Her voice was steady, cold, unbroken. "If you draw steel, you confess." The chief man's hand paused halfway. The rider said quietly, "The law hears anything louder than paper." The chief man's eyes twitched, calculating. His hand changed direction, not toward a weapon but something else inside his coat. He pulled out a second document, sealed and folded. The clerk stuttered, "What is that?" The chief man smiled slowly. "The new surveys," he said. "Already signed, already stamped." The cowboy whispered, "By who?" The chief man held it up so they could all see the wax. A symbol none of them expected, a symbol they all recognized. And the Apache woman stepped back, as if the earth itself had tilted beneath her boots, because the stamp was not from a bank, council, or judge. It was the stamp of a man they all trusted. The wax seal caught the lantern light as though it held fire inside it. None of them moved. The ridge air thickened, pressing against every breath. The stamp on the folded document was unmistakable, clean, bold, official, carved deep. The courier whispered first, That's the sheriff's seal." The cowboy's eyes widened in disbelief. "He signed it." The chief man grinned with slow triumph. "He signed because he understands progress." The rider stepped closer, voice low. "He never signs without witness," the chief man answered. "He had one." The Apache woman's voice was quiet but sharp. "Who stood beside him?" The chief man tapped the seal once. "A man loyal to order." The younger witness clenched his notebook. "The sheriff visited our office," he whispered. The clerk looked pale. "He asked questions," he recalled. The courier stared at the paper as if it could bite. "He swore to protect landholders." The chief man chuckled. "He protects the future, not the past." Wind whipped across the ridge suddenly, lifting dust into their faces. A sudden, cold reminder that the land heard every word. The cowboy took one step forward. "What did you offer him?" The chief man smirked. "Influence." The Apache woman's eyes darkened. "You traded maps for power." The chief man lifted the new document higher. "This one replaces all others," the clerk stammered. "It cannot replace soil tests." The chief man replied, "Authority replaces evidence." The rider spoke firmly, "Not when truth stands present." The courier looked between them, torn. "What happens if this is filed?" The chief man answered without pause. "The valley becomes unclaimed territory." The cowboy stepped up beside the table. "Unclaimed by truth," the chief man snapped. "Claimed by deed." The Apache woman's voice cut through the wind. "Deeds without truth become ghosts." The chief man leaned forward, voice cold. "Then let ghosts starve." The younger witness flinched. "You'd empty the valley," the chief man replied. "Vacant land sells faster." The rider's gaze hardened. "You plan removal." "No," the chief man said. "I plan silence." The courier turned to him. "You'd bury farms?" "Families?" the chief man whispered. "Families can move." The Apache woman answered, "So can consequences." Rain began to pad lightly against pine needles, soft but growing, as though the sky itself refused to stay neutral. The clerk stepped back, drenched in uncertainty. "I won't sign that," the chief man whispered. "You already did." The clerk froze. "What?" The chief man revealed a small second page, a signature page, bearing what looked like the clerk's signed name. The clerk shook his head violently. "I never signed that." The courier inspected quickly. "This is traced," he whispered. "No," the chief man answered. "This is efficient." The Apache woman leaned forward. "Forgery dies under light." The chief man hissed. "Light burns slower than ink." The cowboy turned to the clerk. "You can speak tomorrow." The chief man replied before he could. "He won't see tomorrow if he speaks." The clerk staggered backward, breathing hard. The rider slowly opened the first document, the true one, and held it near the lantern. "This stands as counter-record," he said. The chief man raised the sheriff-sealed document higher, "and mine stands as law." The courier looked torn in half. "Two records cannot live together," the Apache woman answered. "They can, until court." The chief man barked, "Court listens to sheriffs." The younger witness stepped forward suddenly. "Not if multiple sworn statements appear." The chief man stared, calculating. "You'd testify?" The young man's voice trembled but held. "Yes." The chief man sneered. You value soil over safety. No, he answered. I value ground over lies. The chief man's eyes narrowed like a drawn blade. Then ground will bury you. Lightning flashed far off beyond the ridge, a thin line of white dividing sky and earth, a warning or a promise. The Apache woman turned toward the courier. Will you carry both papers? He shook his head slowly. I can't carry conflict. The rider spoke. You must. The courier looked at the two folded documents, his hand trembling over the choice. The cowboy spoke quietly. Truth is not safe work, the courier whispered. Neither is betrayal. The chief man leaned closer, voice oily. Choose power. The Apache woman stepped between the courier and the chief man, standing like a still stone before storm. She spoke softly, every syllable anchored. Power ends, land remains. The courier closed his eyes, breathing hard. I will carry both, he finally said, but only if all parties walk to court. The chief man snarled, I don't walk with liars. The rider replied, Then you walk alone. The chief man smirked calmly. No, he said, I ride with the sheriff. At that moment, from down the valley, a single distant horse answered with a sharp, commanding whinny, not random, not wandering, approaching, and with it, the cold jingle of official spurs. The ridge fell into a tense stillness as the distant horse drew closer, the pace steady, deliberate. Carrying authority like dust carries scent. Metal struck stirrup. Leather creaked. A faint lantern bobbed far down the trail, moving uphill with purpose, not curiosity. The courier whispered, He's alone. No, the rider said. Authority never rides alone. The chief man smiled thinly. Your truth ends tonight. The Apache woman didn't move. Truth doesn't end. Only comfort. The cowboy's jaw tightened. We speak when he arrives. The chief man answered. You won't get the chance. The horse grew louder, closer. Bridgeboards creaked beneath its hooves, echo carrying like law itself being dragged uphill. The clerk suddenly clutched his chest. What if he takes the forged one first? The rider replied, Then truth must walk faster. The young witness looked at his battered notebook. I won't let numbers die. The sky rumbled. Real thunder now, not stone memory. Rain thickened, tapping heads, shoulders, paper edges. The courier panicked softly. These pages will smear. The Apache woman replied, Not if carried by hand and breath. The cowboy looked at her, eyes steady. We run if needed. No, she whispered. If we arrive, not flee. At last the sheriff emerged through the trees, a broad-shouldered man, coat slick with rain, hat bent to shield his eyes, jaw carved from habit, not mercy. He halted his horse before them, silent long enough to be judged by weather itself. The chief man stepped forward confidently. Sheriff, we're ready to file. The sheriff raised a hand, not for silence, for patience. His gaze landed first on the Apache woman. You're involved again, he said quietly. She met his eyes. I never left. Then he looked at the cowboy. You stand with her? Yes. Knowing accusation follows? Yes. Next, the rider, you brought stolen files. Returned truth, the rider answered. Finally, the sheriff turned to the chief man. What's your seal doing on that page? Progress, the chief man said. Was needed? The sheriff asked the courier. You carry the record? Yes, he whispered. Both records. The sheriff dismounted slowly, boots sinking in wet soil, ground speaking before he did. He faced the Apache woman. You refused settlement. Why? She spoke with no tremor. Because settlement erases what breath can prove. The sheriff looked at the young witness. You wrote the soil tests? Yes. You stand by them? With my name. The sheriff faced the clerk. You signed this replacement? No, he gasped. That signature is forged. Rain hammered harder. Lantern flame trembling like it feared the wind. The sheriff turned to the chief man. What did you do? The chief man lifted his chin proudly. I built the future. The sheriff's voice dropped lower. Future built on lies becomes drought. The chief man stepped closer. You think court cares about mud? The sheriff replied. Court cares about sworn breath. The chief man snapped. She is not a legal authority. The Apache woman answered quietly. I am an eyewitness. The sheriff nodded once. Eyewitness outranks rumor. Lightning cracked, white as bone. Thunder followed hard, shaking pine trunks. The chief man lunged toward the table, aiming for the documents. The courier stepped back, blocking him. "Stand clear!" the chief man shouted. "No!" the courier said, voice shaking but firm. The sheriff's hand dropped to his coat, not for a gun, for his badge. He removed it, held it out between them like a mirror that forced truth. Then he spoke. Each word weighted. "This badge signs no land without every witness heard." The chief man screamed, "You'll lose everything." The sheriff answered, "Better loss than rot." The Apache woman stepped forward slowly. "I will testify," she said. The cowboy echoed, "So will I." The young witness added, "And I." The rider rested a hand on the courier's shoulder. He whispered, "You carry truth, not comfort." The courier nodded, clutching both documents. The sheriff gave one final order. "All 5 of you ride at dawn. No splits, no whispers, no shadows." The chief man glared into the rain, voice breaking with rage he could no longer command. "This valley will choke," he hissed. The Apache woman replied, "Only lies choke, so speak air, not dust." A violent wind gust tore across the ridge, extinguishing the lantern in a sudden breath of darkness. For a moment, all they heard was rain hitting earth that refused to lie. Then the sheriff said into the black, "Tomorrow decides map or memory." And in that darkness, no one knew which path dawn would choose. By sundown, the courthouse shutters closed, and the town square settled into that slow western hush, where even wind respects decisions made indoors. A few curious faces lingered near the water trough, whispering half-truths and guesses, but no one dared speak certainty, not until those who lived it spoke first. The sheriff finally stepped onto the veranda and tipped his hat low, signaling that the day's battle would finish in ink rather than dust. The courier locked the documents in his satchel, swearing aloud that none would be altered, not by coin, threat, nor promise. The clerk and young witness walked out together, shoulders straighter than when they entered, as if telling the truth had added ribs instead of taking breath. The cowboy waited near the hitching post, hat in hand, boots dust-chalked, eyes steady. When she stepped outside, he didn't ask what happened. He simply offered presence, not pressure. She touched the railing, inhaled the faint scent of rain still trapped in the wood, then looked toward the open valley stretching past the town. No parade, no victory shout, no final trumpet. Only a new kind of quiet, the kind earned, not feared. She mounted her horse first, choosing direction with intention, not escape. He mounted second, not to lead and not to follow, but to ride beside. Behind them, the sheriff spoke one final line into the fading day. "Land remembers honesty longer than names." They nodded, then rode toward a horizon where truth and soil could breathe the same air, unbroken. If this story stirred something in you, a spark of justice, a breath of courage, or a reminder that truth is seldom the easy road, then don't let the message stop here. Share this video with someone who still believes that honesty matters, even when the world demands silence. Leave a comment with the lesson you take from this journey, and tell us which character's choice meant the most to you, the one who stood, the one who spoke, or the one who carried proof. If you want more stories where courage walks on dusty roads and choices echo louder than danger, hit follow and stay with us. The next tale is already saddled.